The mood around Celtic right now feels heavy, and there is no point pretending otherwise. Anyone watching the team over the last match could sense the frustration in the air, the kind that builds quietly before it spills into groans from the stands. Losing is never acceptable at this club, no matter the context, and that includes a manager taking charge barely a couple of days after walking through the door. Celtic are expected to win, to compete, to impose themselves, and when that does not happen, the reaction is always going to be intense. That is the weight of the badge, and every player and coach knows it the moment they arrive in Glasgow. Still, when you strip the emotion back and really look at what happened on the pitch, there were moments that suggested this side might be heading somewhere interesting, even if the result completely failed to reflect that. In the opening half, Celtic actually looked comfortable on the ball for long spells. The tempo was quicker than we have seen recently, the movement sharper, and there were passages of play where the ball was zipped through midfield with purpose. The short passing combinations, especially when playing out of pressure, felt refreshing, almost unfamiliar, and that alone hinted at ideas being introduced that the players are only just starting to understand. What stood out just as much was the work without the ball. Celtic did not sit off and wait. They hunted in packs, closing down spaces quickly and forcing mistakes. Hearts barely had time to breathe in that first half, let alone string together meaningful possession. Every time they tried to settle, green shirts were on them immediately, snapping into challenges and winning the ball high up the pitch. That aggressive approach allowed Celtic to dictate the rhythm and keep the game largely played in the opposition half, which is exactly where this team wants to be. The problem, and it was a big one, came when Celtic reached the areas that matter most. Getting into the final third meant very little because the quality simply disappeared at the crucial moments. Passes were rushed, crosses failed to beat the first man, and shots lacked conviction. Time and again, the build-up was promising, only for the move to break down at the point where a bit of calm and precision was required. At this level, those moments define matches, and Celtic paid dearly for not making them count. Then came the goals conceded, and that is where the real anger among supporters is justified. The first was particularly difficult to watch, not because of brilliant attacking play, but because of how avoidable it was, and players stopped, arms went up, attention drifted for a split second, and that was all the invitation needed. While some appealed, one opponent stayed alert, reacted instantly, and finished. That lapse had nothing to do with systems or tactics. It was purely about concentration and responsibility, and it sucked the energy out of the stadium in an instant. You could feel the shift after that. The crowd, which had been engaged and largely supportive early on, began to grow restless. Encouragement turned into frustration, and every misplaced pass was met with a groan. When the second goal went in, the sense of belief drained even further, and suddenly a difficult afternoon started to feel like a potential disaster. That emotional swing, both on the pitch and in the stands, played a huge role in how the rest of the match unfolded. What makes it all the more frustrating is that the game could have looked very different had one early chance been taken. A clear opportunity fell Celtic's way, the kind that changes momentum instantly. And when it was missed, you could almost sense the confidence leaking away. Score that, and the noise inside the ground shifts. The players settle, and the opposition are forced to chase shadows even more aggressively. Football is often decided by moments like that, and Celtic found themselves on the wrong side of one again. Looking back calmly, there was enough in that opening period to suggest The ideas being introduced can work with time. The structure was visible, the intention was clear, and several players seemed to understand their roles within it. The issue is that understanding a system and executing it instinctively are two very different things. Right now, too many players are still thinking instead of reacting, and at this level, hesitation is punished immediately. This becomes especially obvious when you look at how certain positions functioned during the match. One side of the pitch carried most of the attacking threat, while the other felt passive in comparison. When a defender sees a lot of the ball but is not comfortable driving forward or breaking lines with passes, the opposition are happy to let him have it. That imbalance allowed Hearts to shift their shape, knowing where the danger was likely to come from, and it made Celtic far easier to read than they should have been. Contrast that with the other flank, where energy, movement, and aggression combined to cause constant problems. There was forward momentum, overlaps, and genuine intent to hurt the opposition, to hurt the B. It highlighted how effective the system can look when the right profile of player is in the right role, and equally how limited it becomes when that balance is missing. These are the fine margins that need addressing, either through internal adjustments or future recruitment. That is not about singling anyone out or pointing fingers unfairly. It is simply the reality of trying to implement a very specific style with a squad that was built for something slightly different. Certain players will thrive in this setup, others may need time, and some positions clearly need reinforcement. The encouraging part is that these issues are tactical and structural, not a lack of effort or desire. Away from the pitch, much has been made of small details that, frankly, feel overblown. Body language, touchline moments, even post-match comments have been dissected as if they define everything about where Celtic are heading, focusing on performance rather than obsessing over results in the very short term has been twisted into something negative when in reality, every successful manager talks about process. Winning does not happen by accident. It is built through habits, structure, and belief in what you are trying to achieve. Celtic are clearly in a transitional phase, one that feels uncomfortable precisely because expectations are so high. Patience is demanded, yet immediate success is also required. And those two things rarely coexist easily. The upcoming fixtures will offer a clearer picture of how quickly this group can adapt and whether the early promise seen in spells can be sustained over 90 minutes. There is no denying that pressure is already building, especially with big matches looming that carry more than just 3 points. Early trophies set the tone, and failure to deliver can magnify every doubt and criticism, regardless of context. That is the reality of managing Celtic, and it is something the players, as well as the coaching staff, must confront head-on. What remains clear is that the foundations of a distinct way of playing are being laid. The movement, the pressing, the bravery on the ball, all of it points toward a long-term vision rather than a short-term patch. The challenge now is reducing the mistakes, sharpening the execution, and finding that ruthless edge in front of goal. Until that happens consistently, every positive sign will continue to feel fragile, and every setback will feel far heavier than it probably should. As the conversation moves on from what happened on the pitch, attention naturally turns to how this new approach is being interpreted from the outside. A lot of noise has surrounded the early days of this regime, some of it fair, much of it wildly exaggerated. There has been an obsession with surface-level details instead of the bigger picture, as if a few isolated moments somehow define a manager who has built his reputation on a clear identity and repeated success elsewhere. That kind of reaction says more about the current anxiety around the club than it does about what is actually unfolding behind the scenes. When comments about focusing on performance rather than outcome are pulled apart, they often lose their original meaning. The suggestion that valuing performance means accepting defeat completely ignores how football actually works over the course of a season. You do not become a consistent winner by chasing results blindly. You become one by creating structures that allow good performances to happen week after week, because those performances eventually turn into victories. That mindset has been echoed by countless successful figures in the modern game, and it feels strange that it suddenly becomes controversial when Celtic find themselves in a difficult spell. The truth is that Celtic do not have the luxury of long adaptation periods. Matches arrive relentlessly, and there's barely time to reset, never mind overhaul an entire system. That is why committing to a clear plan immediately makes sense. Delaying it only pushes the same problems further down the line when the pressure is even greater. By implementing these ideas now, the staff are getting a real-time assessment of which players can adapt quickly, which ones need support, and where the squad clearly needs strengthening. This is where the next phase becomes crucial. Training sessions are no longer just about recovery, they are about repetition and clarity. Patterns need to become automatic, especially when the tempo increases, and decision-making has to be instant. Right now, too many moments are being decided by hesitation. Players arrive in good areas and either overthink the pass or rush it entirely, neither of which works at this level. That composure is not something you demand verbally. It comes through familiarity and confidence in the system. Injuries, of course, have not helped. Missing key players limits flexibility, particularly on one side of the pitch where balance has been an obvious issue. The absence of natural width and drive in certain roles forces others to compensate, and that knock-on effect can make the shape look lopsided. When fit, players who understand the demands of those positions can completely transform how a side functions, both in possession and defensively. There has also been an interesting response from within the dressing room, with players openly acknowledging how challenging the transition has been. That honesty should be seen as a positive rather than a concern. It shows there is awareness of what is required and an acceptance that improvement will not happen overnight. Learning a new structure in a matter of days is almost impossible, and moments of uncertainty are inevitable when players are trying to position themselves correctly while also reacting to the flow of the game. You could see that, especially in the second half of the match, when fatigue and frustration began to creep in. Movements that were sharp earlier became half a second slower, and gaps started to appear. That is not about effort dropping, it is about mental load. When players are still processing information, concentration levels take a hit, and that is often when the most costly errors occur. Reducing that cognitive strain is one of the biggest challenges facing the coaching staff right now. Looking ahead, European nights and domestic fixtures arrive with very different demands. Facing technically strong opposition exposes flaws quickly, but it also accelerates learning. Every match in this period is effectively a live experiment, testing how much of the plan is being absorbed and where adjustments are needed. The balance between development and results is delicate, especially at a club where expectations are unforgiving. Domestically, however, there is far less room for excuses. Dropping points or missing out on silverware carries a weight that can derail momentum entirely. Supporters understand the need for progress, but they also expect standards to be maintained. Finding that middle ground is perhaps the hardest task of all because it requires patience without complacency and ambition without panic. What cannot be ignored is that individual errors have played a far bigger role than the system itself in recent setbacks. Switching off defensively, misjudging simple passes, or snatching at chances in front of goal are issues that would hurt any team, regardless of formation. Cleaning those aspects up will immediately make Celtic look more solid and more dangerous, even before any tactical tweaks are applied. Confidence, in many ways, is the missing ingredient. Footballers play on instinct when they feel secure, but when doubt creeps in, everything tightens up. One clean victory, one convincing performance where chances are taken and concentration holds, can change the mood dramatically. Suddenly, the same ideas that were criticized become praised, and belief spreads quickly through the squad and the support. Before we proceed, subscribe to our channel and enable notifications to receive all exclusive news about Celtic FC. Don't miss any details about your favorite team. It's extremely important for Celtic FC fans. Whispers are swirling around Celtic Park after a bombshell reportedly dropped from the mouth of Hoops manager Wilfried Nancy. Sources close to the club claim that Nancy, known for his fiery temperament and uncompromising approach, lost his cool during what was said to be an intense team meeting. Allegedly, the French tactician pointed an accusatory finger at two unnamed players, labeling them as contaminating the squad and vowing to remove them from the fold. Inside circles insist this was not just idle frustration. Apparently, Nancy has grown increasingly intolerant of what he perceives as negative influences undermining his carefully built locker room culture. The rumor mill suggests that the confrontation left the dressing room in stunned silence, with senior players reportedly trying to mediate while others watched in uneasy anticipation. Nobody has confirmed the identities of the two players at the center of the storm, but speculation is rife. Pundits are already weighing up the potential fallout. Could this be the end of certain high-profile careers at Celtic? Or is it just another episode in the unpredictable saga of Nancy's management style? The gossip has set social media alight, with fans dissecting every possible scenario and debating which squad members could have pushed the boss to the edge. Some insiders hint at long-standing tensions finally boiling over, while others point to Nancy's reputation for demanding absolute discipline, suggesting this could be a dramatic power move rather than an impulsive outburst. Either way, the atmosphere at the club is reportedly tense, with whispers of backroom meetings, private warnings, and potential transfers already circulating in hushed tones. While the Hoops have a crucial season ahead, all eyes are now on how Nancy will handle the fallout. Will the alleged contaminators be quietly eased out, or could this lead to a more public showdown that leaves fans and pundits alike holding their breath? For now, the Celtic faithful can only speculate as the manager's words continue to echo through the corridors of Parkhead, casting a shadow of uncertainty over the squad. One thing is certain. In the world of Scottish football, rumours like this are rarely without teeth, and the saga of Wilfried Nancy and his mysterious disciplinary ultimatum is set to dominate chatter long after the initial outburst. Hello, fan. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel, as it means a lot to Celtic FC. Also, share your opinion about the news in the comments below. See you in the next video.